All right, how is everybody doing? It has been a while since I've made one of these videos, but today I kind of wanted to get on here and talk about everyone's favorite topic, allocated bourbon. And I wanted to talk about how in the world do we actually get some of these bottles. And I wanted to kind of break the stigma around some of these bottles. There are a lot of opinions going around about how, retail this has to be retail that. It's not worth it if you don't pay retail. I'll say in general, allocated bourbon does not mean good bourbon. Buy what you like. Don't listen to other people. Bourbon in this community, in this hobby, people are obsessed with giving their opinions and they think everyone wants to hear it. Well, the beautiful thing about bourbon is that you're spending your money on it. You're not spending someone else's money on it. So if what you're buying is worth it to you, then buy the bottle or do whatever it takes to get the bottle. You are not trying to please anyone else but yourself and maybe your wife. So keep that in mind. But I'm gonna walk through several ways, and a few of them are, name brand standard ways to get bourbon, but I'm going to talk through how you can even go about getting some of these bottles. But like I said, not all allocated bourbon is worth the hunt. So let's jump into how you can even begin to get these bottles. First of all, ABC states. So I grew up in an ABC state. I lived in a different ABC state. Suffice to say, I've lived basically my whole life in ABC states, so I'm pretty well versed in how their allocation and bourbon distribution works. So first, Virginia. I lived in Virginia. I love the way they distribute allocated bottles. It's obviously not as good as states with, no liquor laws, but they do two different ways. So first, they have the notification drop system where they'll give you a notification on your phone. They'll notify the stores to release all allocated inventory. You have no clue what your store is getting, but it's a mad dash to that store to see what you can get. And the beauty of all of it is that it's all retail. And the more you get into bourbon, you're going to realize that retail is very rare. Very, very rare. We've seen even places like Total Wine have started to boost their prices through the roof. You even go to the state of Kentucky where it's supposed to be bourbon heaven, and you walk into liquor stores and prices are through the roof. So a beautiful thing about the ABC states is prices are retail. So that's the first one. And then the next way that Virginia does the distribution is pre-planned releases. This is camping, similar to the state of Alabama where I also lived. They release a list of potential products to be released. This is how a lot of also like liquor stores in non-ABC states work, and people will start camping as early as the Thursday, maybe even the Wednesday before, depending on what bottles are available. I think that is a phenomenal way to distribute bourbon. If you're willing to put in the time for a bottle, you can get whatever you want essentially at retail. I think it's great. It deters slippers because it's like, who's gonna sit for 3 days for a bottle they're just gonna sell? Like, that's not worth making $100. Especially as these distilleries continue to close that gap between retail and secondary, the flipping margins are just not as good as they used to be. So we kind of have seen a decrease in that, especially with distilleries like Wild Turkey. Next is the state of Alabama. They do it similarly, but when they release their bottles, they release a list of what each store is specifically getting. So you know exactly what's going to be at each store when they open that day, so you know whether it's worth it to go and camp. In the state of Virginia, I've camped hours on end just to get an E.H. Taylor small batch. It's kind of a letdown. You have no idea what you're getting, but I will say, camping is pretty fun. It probably beats sitting on the couch on a Saturday morning. That's my 2 cents, but I don't think it's a waste of time. I enjoy it. It's fun. You meet really nice people. I will say the bourbon community has some of the nicest people I've met in any of the hobbies I've had in my life. Next, this is the one everyone talks about, and it honestly kind of is like nails on a chalkboard to me. Making relationships with store owners. I can see the allure. I can see how, I got a George T. Stagg for $120 or whatever retail is. I can see that. I can see the receipt. But how many bottles, how many store picks over the course of a year over the course of years did you have to buy to get in position for that store owner to be willing to sell you one of his 3 George T. Staggs, also ignoring the fact that, like, I'm sure he took 1 or 2. So working with stores, I think they're just corrupt. I don't like being kind of held in someone else's hand, like, what are they gonna give me? I prefer to be in control of what I want and what I wanna go get. It's just not worth it to me. I don't wanna spend $1,000 on random bottles that I don't want so that I might get the chance to go and buy a George T. Stagg. You don't even know what you're gonna get at the end of the year. It's completely up to what the store gets and what they're willing to sell you. Ultimately, you're in their hands. Like, they control your destiny. I don't like that. I know people have got great bottles. I think it depends on the size of the town, the size of the liquor store, what their allocations look like. It might be worth it depending on what that relationship with a store owner looks like. That, I think, depending on the relationship, is how a lot of people have gotten really good bottles, but I think you need to have a big wallet for that to work. Last, this is the one that is kind of not talked about a lot on YouTube. I've seen some videos of it mentioning it. Well, actually, first, let's talk about friends. I think the best way that I have found in getting bottles of bourbon that I've really wanted, allocated, store picks, whatever, is finding friends that also enjoy this hobby. A lot of people travel. I travel, my friends travel. You see different liquor stores, you see stuff that they have. It's great to have friends that will hunt for you and you can hunt for them. I've gotten tons of bottles. In fact, I've got this bottle from a friend. Friends, they make it so much easier. I would highly encourage you to go and make friends, whether that's at a camp out for a bourbon release or at a restaurant bar or whatever, or at a local bourbon tasting. Make friends in bourbon, and you all know what the other person likes, and you inherently look for that for the other person when you're, out and around. So I've gotten a ton of bottles from friends that have seen things that I like and called me up and said, hey, do you want this? I'm here. And it's places I've never been. I would never see it. So it's good to have eyes and ears in different places that can help you get bottles you would never otherwise see. That's like 3A. 3B kind of relates to that, but it's more of like, I will say there are outlets. I don't want to implicate myself, but there are other outlets than liquor stores and friends to get bottles. And I'm not talking about online, I'm talking about certain channels where you can trade and buy bottles. I'm not condoning this, I'm not implicating myself in this, but there are ways to get bottles other than brick and mortar liquor stores. Use discernment in deciding if it's worth for you to take that risk. But I will say, you can get some really good bottles in that side of the bourbon world, in the sort of black market, for a lot less than you'll ever find them in a store. And I will also say, you can get bottles that you will never otherwise see, because it's just, to me, not worth hunting. Bourbon hunting to me is not worth it. The gas and the time investment to maybe get a bottle of Stag for $150 is not worth it for me. There are other outlets where you can get bottles without the hunt or the gas price. I'm going to be very careful with how I describe that point, but I will say bourbon is not black and white, and it kind of goes back to the saying that we've all talked about, we've all heard from the beginning of time. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And bourbon is very much similar to that. Like any hobby you have is easier if you know people in that hobby. And so I will just leave it at the fact that there are other outlets in bourbon that can help you get bottles you've won, or that you want, or that you have wanted. Allocated bourbon is the exciting topic. It's the fun topic. Nobody wants to go and hunt for a Buffalo Trace, standard Buffalo Trace. I mean, everyone has it, but it's really good juice. Saves you a lot of time and saves you a lot of money. I think it all depends on what you want from bourbon, and I'm a huge proponent of the fact of I will close the video on this, do not let other people tell you how to spend your money. If I went and spent $250 on this and I opened it and I loved it and I thought it was worth every bit of $250, then there's no one that can tell me that that's a bad purchase, because it was my money and so it was worth it. If I went and spent $300 on this and loved it, then that's worth $300 to you. So decide for yourself what you're willing to spend on bourbon. Just because Joe Schmo on the internet says that bottle's not even worth retail doesn't mean it's the same for you. So obviously recommend trying bottles before you buy them, but I will leave this video on the point of saying there are other means to get bourbon, but use discernment, be careful. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying brick and mortar liquor stores with corrupt owners are not the only way to get bourbon. And this video might get some pushback if anyone watches it, but I do believe there are a lot of opportunities in the bourbon world that a lot of people are missing because they miss out on relationships. And I'm not just talking about relationships with store owners. So I hope y'all liked today's video. I hope you learned a little something. It was kind of opinionated what, I think the bourbon scene or buying bourbon looks like and how I feel about it. But I hope it was an enjoyable video. I like making videos like this. I have a lot of opinions on the bourbon community, but yeah, let me know in the comments what you thought. The next video, I'm probably gonna record it right after this, just do a batch film and talk about what I got in the month of February. I actually ended up getting more and better than I thought. But stay tuned for the next video. It might be coming out tomorrow, if not very soon after. As always, thank y'all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I would really appreciate anyone that subscribes, because there's like nobody subscribed. I mean, there's one video on the channel, but please subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you for watching.